Number welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories. Number the archivist's burden. I never wanted to be here. The decommissioned weather station on Blackrock Point wasn't anyone's idea of a dream assignment, especially not in November when the North Atlantic winds could strip paint from the walls. But when the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration offers you a temporary contract after 2 years of unemployment, you take it, even if it means spending 8 weeks cataloging obsolete equipment in a facility that's been officially offline since 2011. Just inventory everything, Mr. Mercer, Dr. Whitaker had said, not looking up from her tablet during my briefing. Document the condition, take photos, mark what can be salvaged for the museum. The rest gets scrapped. What she didn't mention was the isolation. The nearest town, Portsmouth, was 30 miles south along a coastal road that became impassable during storms. Cell service existed only on clear days, and even then only in specific corners of the facility's upper level. The internet connection came and went like a fickle ghost. You'll have everything you need, she'd assured me. The generator is maintained quarterly. The living quarters are functional. We just need someone with your background in meteorological equipment to properly document everything before demolition next spring. My background. Right, 15 years at AccuWeather before the layoffs, followed by 2 years of increasingly desperate job applications. My background was now just that, behind me, fading with each passing month of irrelevance. So here I was, driving up the winding access road as sleet pelted my windshield, the wipers barely keeping up. The station emerged from the fog like a concrete tumor on the cliff face, a 3-story brutalist structure with a radar dome on top that resembled a giant, dirty golf ball. 2 smaller outbuildings flanked it, their windows dark and uninviting. The key card worked on the first try, which I took as a promising sign. The heavy steel door groaned open, revealing a vestibule with peeling gray paint and the lingering smell of mildew and something else, something metallic, like ozone after a lightning strike. The lights came on automatically as I entered, fluorescence flickering to life with a series of audible pops. The main floor contained what had once been the operations center, banks of outdated computers, weather monitoring equipment, and a large central table covered in dusty topographical maps. Home sweet home, I muttered, setting down my duffel bag and the box of supplies NOAA had provided. I spent that first afternoon exploring the facility, clipboard in hand, making preliminary notes. The ground floor held the operations center, a small kitchen, and a bathroom. The second floor contained sleeping quarters, a recreation room with a TV that probably hadn't worked since Obama's first term, and another bathroom with a shower that dripped rust-colored water for several minutes before running clear. The third floor was dedicated entirely to equipment, server banks, backup systems, and doors leading out to the radar platform and various atmospheric sensors. Everything was covered in a fine layer of dust, but otherwise in surprisingly good condition. It was on this floor that I noticed the first oddity. According to my briefing packet, all systems had been powered down when the station was decommissioned, yet one of the server banks had a single green LED blinking steadily in the darkness. I made a note to check the power connections tomorrow. Probably just a backup battery that had never fully discharged. The basement level was the least welcoming, concrete walls, pipes running along the ceiling, and the massive generator that hummed quietly, providing power to the otherwise abandoned facility. There was also a heavy door marked Archives that was locked. I'd have to ask about getting access. By evening, I'd set up my living space in what had once been the station chief's quarters, a relatively spacious room with a desk, bed, and private bathroom. I unpacked my laptop, connected to the sporadic Wi-Fi, and sent a brief email to my contact at NOAA confirming my arrival. Then I heated one of the frozen meals I'd brought and ate while reviewing the inventory sheets I'd need to complete over the coming weeks. Outside, the storm intensified. Rain lashed against the windows, and wind moaned through some imperfection in the building's seals. I tried not to think about how isolated I was or how the nearest human being was probably the old man running the gas station 10 miles down the road. I fell asleep to the sound of the storm and dreamed of drowning. I woke at 3:17 a.m. to the sound of beeping. It was distant but persistent, a regular electronic pulse that hadn't been there when I'd fallen asleep. I lay still for several minutes, hoping it would stop, but the rhythm continued unbroken. Sighing, I got up, pulled on a sweatshirt, and grabbed my flashlight. The hallway outside my room was dark except for the dim emergency lights near the stairwell. The beeping seemed to be coming from above me, from the equipment floor. I climbed the stairs, my flashlight beam bouncing off the walls. The third floor was colder than the rest of the building, and my breath fogged in front of me. The beeping grew louder as I approached the main equipment room. Inside, I swept my light across banks of old computers and monitoring stations. The beeping was coming from a weather radar console in the corner, a piece of equipment that should have been dormant for years. Its screen glowed a faint blue, displaying a radar sweep of the surrounding area. "What the hell?" I muttered, approaching it cautiously. According to the display, a massive storm system was centered directly over the station, which matched the weather outside, but there was something odd about the pattern. At the very center of the cyclonic rotation was a perfect circle of calm, like an eye, but it wasn't moving like a normal storm eye. It remained fixed directly over the station, even as the storm around it shifted and swirled. I checked the power connections. The machine was indeed plugged in and fully operational. I tried the power button, holding it down for several seconds, but nothing happened. The radar continued its sweep, beeping with each rotation. I made a note in my phone to include this in my morning report. Perhaps there was a backup power system I wasn't aware of, or maybe some of the equipment had been left in standby mode rather than fully decommissioned. As I turned to leave, the screen flickered, and for a moment the radar image changed. Instead of a weather pattern, I saw what looked like a grid of dots, arranged in a perfect geometric pattern. Then it was gone and the storm radar returned. I blinked, wondering if I'd imagined it. Sleep deprivation could cause visual hallucinations, and it was the middle of the night. I decided to return to bed and deal with it in the morning. As I reached the door, the beeping stopped abruptly. I turned back to see the radar screen go dark. The room fell into silence. "Okay then," I whispered, unsettled by the timing. It was as if the machine knew I was leaving and had decided to power down. Back in bed, I found sleep elusive. The wind had died down outside, leaving an unnatural quiet that was somehow worse than the storm. I lay awake until dawn began to lighten the sky, thinking about that perfect circle in the center of the storm and the grid pattern that had appeared for just a moment. The next day, I focused on inventorying the ground floor equipment. I deliberately avoided the third floor, telling myself I was following a logical progression from bottom to top. The truth was that the incident with the radar had unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. Around noon, I tried calling my contact at NOAA to ask about the active equipment, but as expected, I couldn't get a signal. The internet connection was working, however, so I sent a detailed email asking about the radar system and whether some equipment had been left operational for monitoring purposes. While waiting for a response, I tried the locked archive door in the basement again. This time, I noticed a keycard reader beside it, different from the one at the main entrance. My keycard didn't work on it. Another item for my growing list of questions. By late afternoon, I'd received no response to my email, and the internet connection had become increasingly unstable. I decided to check the third floor again to see if the radar was still active. It wasn't. The equipment room was dark and silent, exactly as it should have been. I examined the radar console that had been beeping the night before. It was unplugged. I stared at the power cord lying on the floor, trying to reconcile this with what I'd seen hours earlier. I was certain the machine had been plugged in when I'd checked it during the night. I even remembered checking the connection specifically. I plugged it back in and pressed the power button. Nothing happened. The machine remained dark and silent, as dead as it should have been after years of inactivity. "I'm losing it," I muttered, making a note in my inventory that the radar system appeared non-functional. Perhaps I'd been more tired than I thought last night. Maybe I'd dreamed the whole episode. As I was writing, the lights flickered briefly. A moment later, my phone chimed with an email notification. The subject line read, "RE, active equipment at Blackrock Station." The response was brief and not particularly helpful. "Mr. Mercer, all equipment at Blackrock Point Weather Station was decommissioned and powered down in 2011. No systems should be operational beyond the facility's basic power, water, and climate control. If you're experiencing issues with any equipment appearing to function, please document it thoroughly and avoid interacting with it if possible. We'll send a technical team to investigate after your inventory is complete." Regarding archive access, the basement archives contain sensitive historical data and are not relevant to your inventory assignment. Please focus on the equipment as specified in your contract. Dr. Eliza Whitaker, NOAA Facilities Management. I frowned at the response. It seemed oddly dismissive, especially the part about avoiding interaction with functioning equipment. If something was still working after a decade of abandonment, wouldn't they want to know why? And what sensitive historical data could possibly be in the archives of a weather station? I was contemplating this when all the lights went out. The sudden darkness was absolute. No emergency lights, no indicator LEDs on equipment, nothing. I fumbled for my phone to use its flashlight, but the screen showed no signal and only 2% battery, despite having been at 60% moments before. Before I could process this, the lights came back on. Every piece of equipment in the room hummed to life simultaneously, screens flickering on, fans whirring, indicator lights blinking in sequences of red, green, and amber. The radar console that had refused to power on minutes ago now glowed brightly, its screen showing the same storm pattern I'd seen the night before, with that unnatural, perfectly circular eye centered over the station. I stood frozen, watching as data scrolled across screens that should have been dead. Weather readings, atmospheric pressure, wind speeds, all flowing as if the station had never been decommissioned. Then as suddenly as they'd activated, everything shut down again. The lights remained on, but all the equipment went dark and silent. My phone chimed again. Another email, same sender. Mr. Mercer, our systems indicate a power surge at your location. Please check the generator and report any damage to equipment. Do not attempt to restart any systems that may have been affected. Dr. Whitaker, how did she know about a power surge that had happened seconds ago? I checked the timestamp on the email. It had been sent 3 minutes before the surge occurred. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. I needed to get out of this room. As I turned to leave, I noticed something on one of the screens that had briefly come to life. Though the display was now dark, a series of words appeared to have been burned into the screen, visible as faint, ghostly text. They are listening. I practically ran down the stairs to my quarters. That night the dreams came again. I was underwater, but not drowning. I was standing on the ocean floor, looking up at the surface far above, where dark shapes moved against the distant light. Around me were structures, not shipwrecks or natural formations, but buildings. An underwater city, geometrically perfect, with architecture that hurt my eyes to look at directly. In the dream, I knew I was supposed to be there. I was walking toward a central structure, a massive tower that spiraled up toward the surface. I had a purpose, a message to deliver. I woke gasping, my sheets soaked with sweat despite the cold room. The digital clock read 3:17 a.m., exactly the same time I'd woken to the beeping the night before, and there it was again. The same beeping coming from above. This time, I didn't immediately get up. I lay in bed, listening to the rhythmic pulse, trying to discern a pattern. It wasn't random. It sounded almost like Morse code. I wasn't familiar enough with the old system to decode it, but there was definitely a repeating sequence. I reached for my phone to record it, but the device was dead. I distinctly remembered plugging it in before bed, but the charging indicator wasn't lit. I tried the bedside lamp. Nothing. The power was out again, yet the beeping continued. I had to know what was happening. I found my flashlight and headed upstairs again. The equipment room was different this time. All the screens were active, bathing the room in a pale blue glow. The radar was running, showing the same storm pattern, but now additional data was scrolling across adjacent screens, numbers, graphs, and text that moved too quickly to read. I approached cautiously, my flashlight beam almost unnecessary in the electronic glow. The beeping was coming from the radar console again, but it wasn't the machine itself making the sound. It was coming from a speaker system that should have been disconnected years ago. As I watched, the radar image changed. The storm pattern dissolved, replaced by the grid of dots I'd glimpsed the previous night, but now I could see it clearly. It wasn't a grid, it was a map of lights in the ocean, spreading outward from the coastline where the weather station stood. Text appeared at the bottom of the screen. Receiving transmission, the beeping changed tone, becoming a series of electronic squeals and static bursts. It sounded like an old dial-up modem connection, but with an underlying pattern that seemed almost linguistic. Then words began to appear on the screen, one by one. We have been waiting. My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't a malfunction. Someone or something was communicating. Are you the new archivist? I stood paralyzed, unable to look away. Was I supposed to respond? How? There was no keyboard connected to this system. As if reading my thoughts, new text appeared. Speak we here. Who are you? My voice came out as a whisper. The screens flickered and the beeping intensified. More text. We are the DPTHS. What do you want? Access to archive the locked room in the basement. The sensitive historical data that Dr. Whitaker had warned me away from. I don't have access, I said, louder now. You are archivist, you have access. I'm just here to inventory equipment. I don't have the key card for the archive. The screens flickered again and a new image appeared, a schematic of the weather station, with a pulsing dot in my quarters. Look beneath bed. Previous archivist left it. I felt sick. How did they know where I was sleeping? How did they know anything about this place? What are you? I asked. Instead of text, the screens showed an image, a structure rising from the ocean floor, similar to the tower from my dream. Then it shifted to what looked like a satellite view of the ocean directly off the coast, where a perfect circle of calm water existed in the midst of turbulent seas. We have always been here. You will open the archive. The lights and screens suddenly went dark, plunging me into blackness. My flashlight flickered and died. I stood in perfect darkness, the afterimage of those words burning in my vision. Then the emergency lights came on, casting weak red illumination across the room. All the equipment was dark and silent once more, as if nothing had happened. I made my way back to my quarters, hands shaking. I told myself I wouldn't look under the bed. This was a hallucination, a waking nightmare brought on by isolation and stress. I needed sleep, that's all. But as I stood in my room, I found myself kneeling beside the bed. I shined my flashlight, which was working again, into the narrow space beneath. There, taped to the underside of the bed frame, was a key card. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat at my desk, staring at the key card I'd found. It looked official, NOAA logo, magnetic strip, but no name or photo. Just an ID number, 3172. The same digits as the time I'd woken both nights, 3:17. When morning came, I tried to send another email to Dr. Whitaker, but the internet connection was completely gone. My phone showed no service, and the weather outside had worsened, driving rain and winds that howled around the building's corners. I spent the day continuing my inventory, deliberately staying off the third floor and away from the basement. I worked methodically, taking photos, making notes, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy. But my eyes kept drifting to the keycard sitting on my desk, and my mind kept returning to the messages on the screens. We are the DEPTHS. What did that mean? Who or what was communicating through the station's old equipment? And why did they want access to the archive? By late afternoon, I'd run out of tasks to distract myself. I sat in the old break room, eating a granola bar and staring at the rain-lashed windows. I needed to make a decision. I could pack up and leave, just get in my car and drive back to civilization, contract be damned. But the storm outside had intensified to the point where driving would be dangerous, possibly fatal. And some part of me needed to know what was happening here. I took the key card and went to the basement. The archive door looked more imposing than it had before. The key card reader glowed with a steady red light. I stood before it for several minutes, the card in my hand, debating whether to proceed. What was the worst that could happen? The card wouldn't work and I'd go back to my inventory. Or it would work and I'd find boxes of old weather data. Nothing sinister about that. But I knew somehow that it wouldn't be that simple. I swiped the card. The reader beeped once and the light turned green. There was a heavy click as the lock disengaged. The door opened onto darkness. I found a light switch just inside, and fluorescent tubes flickered to life, revealing a large room filled with shelves. But they didn't contain boxes of paper records as I'd expected. The shelves held specimens, biological samples in preservative-filled jars. Fish, crustaceans, and other marine life, some recognizable, others bizarrely deformed or entirely alien. Each was meticulously labeled with scientific nomenclature and dates going back decades. Against the far wall stood a row of filing cabinets. Between them was a desk with an old computer terminal that hummed to life as I entered, its screen glowing green with a cursor blinking expectantly. This wasn't a weather station archive, it was a research facility. I approached the specimens first, examining the labels. Many were species I recognized, common Atlantic fish and invertebrates. But interspersed among them were organisms I'd never seen before, creatures with too many appendages, unusual symmetry, or bioluminescent organs preserved in their translucent bodies. One jar in particular caught my attention. It contained what appeared to be a small octopus, but with an unusual number of tentacles, 12 instead of 8, and a body structure that seemed wrong somehow. Its label read, Specimen 3172 juvenile, collected 2011, final sample before closure, the same number again, 3172. I moved to the computer terminal. The screen displayed a simple prompt. BLACKROCK Point Research Station Deep Ocean Monitoring Initiative, enter query. I typed, what is specimen 3172? The screen cleared, then filled with text, specimen 3172. Juvenile member of previously unclassified deep-sea species. Tentatively designated Abyssus sapiens based on observed behaviors and neural complexity. Specimen collected during final expedition before station closure. Warning, all research regarding Abyssus sapiens has been classified under National Security, Directive 47B. Further information requires clearance level 5. Note: following the incidents of October 2011, all active research on Abyssus sapiens has been terminated. Specimens remain in containment at Facility Deepwater. This terminal will now lock for security purposes. Please contact your supervisor. The screen went dark, then returned to the original prompt. I tried the same query again, but received only Access DNIED. I tried other queries. What is the Deep Ocean Monitoring Initiative? What happened in October 2011? What is Facility Deepwater? But received the same response each time. I turned my attention to the filing cabinets. Most were locked, but one drawer slid open, containing folders labeled by year. I pulled out the folder for 2011, the year the station was supposedly decommissioned. Inside were research notes, mostly handwritten, detailing observations of unusual oceanic phenomena off the coast. There were mentions of communication attempts and response patterns, along with coordinates that corresponded to locations in the Atlantic directly east of the station. One page contained a transcription that made my blood run cold. Oct 17, 2011, 3:17 a.m. transmission received at standard frequency. Partial translation follows. We have been watching, we have been learning, your signals reach our city, we will rise, we will reclaim, we are the DEPTHS note. Transmission accompanied by unusual weather pattern, perfect circular calm at coordinates 41.3 degrees N, 70.8 degrees W. Recommend immediate notification of Deepwater Command. The final entry in the folder was dated October 21, 2011. Station closure ordered effective immediately. All personnel to relocate to facility Deepwater. All specimens to be transferred except 3172, which will remain as inactive monitoring baseline. Weather monitoring cover story to be maintained. Automated systems will continue signal monitoring and transmission recording. Final note, if you are reading this and are not authorized personnel, you have compromised national security. The weather station cover is real. This facility will be decommissioned for public purposes. However, automated systems will remain active beneath the surface. They are listening, they have always been listening, and now they know we can hear them. God help us all. Dr. Marcus Chen, Station Chief. I set down the folder with shaking hands. The weather station had never been a weather station at all. It was a listening post, monitoring communications from something in the deep ocean. Something intelligent enough to transmit signals that could be translated into English. Something that called itself the depths, and now it was communicating with me. A noise behind me made me turn. The archive door had swung shut. I rushed to it and tried the handle, but it was locked. I swiped the key card against the reader inside, but the light remained red. I was trapped. The computer terminal beeped, drawing my attention. New text had appeared on the screen. Archivist, we see you have found our child. I looked at the specimen jar containing the strange octopus-like creature. This is your child, I said aloud. One of many taken by the surface dwellers. I'm not responsible for that, I said, approaching the terminal. I just came here to inventory equipment. I didn't know about any of this. You are the new archivist. You will help US reclaim. Help you how? I don't understand what you want from me. The screen changed, showing a schematic of the station again, but this time highlighting a section of the basement I hadn't explored, an area beyond the archive, accessible through a door I hadn't noticed. The beacon must be activated. I saw it now, a door at the back of the archive, partially hidden behind a shelving unit. It was marked Transmitter Control, Authorized Personnel Only. What will the beacon do? I asked, already suspecting the answer. It will guide US to the surface. It will begin the reclamation. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Whatever these entities were, these intelligent deep-sea beings, they wanted to come to the surface. To reclaim it, whatever that meant, and they wanted me to activate a beacon to guide them. I can't do that, I said. I don't know what you are or what you want, but I can't just help you invade the surface world. The terminal beeped again. You have no choice. The water rises. A rumbling sound came from somewhere beneath the floor. At first I thought it was the generator, but then I noticed water seeping under the archive door. Not a lot, just a thin trickle, but it was definitely coming in. I tried the door again, still locked. The computer continued. The storm is ours, the tide is ours, the future is ours. Activate the beacon or drown in your archive. The water was coming in faster now, already covering the floor to the depth of a half-inch. I had to make a decision. I could try to find another way out of the archive, maybe an emergency exit or ventilation system. I could refuse to help these creatures and hope that help would come before the room flooded completely. Or I could activate the beacon and potentially unleash something ancient and powerful upon the world. The water reached my ankles as I stood contemplating my options. The specimen in the jar, specimen 3172, seemed to be watching me, its preserved tentacles pressed against the glass as if trying to reach out. I made my decision. I waded through the rising water to the transmitter control door. It opened easily, revealing a small room containing what looked like radio equipment, but more advanced than anything I'd seen in the main facility. A large red button was prominently displayed on the central console, protected by a clear plastic cover. The label above it read, Emergency Beacon, activate only under direct orders. The water was at my knees now. I could feel the cold seeping through my clothes, numbing my legs. The computer terminal behind me beeped continuously, urging me on. I lifted the plastic cover. My hand hovered over the button. I want guarantees, I said loudly. I want to know that no one will be harmed when you reclaim the surface. The terminal beeped and I turned to read the response. We do not negotiate with archivists. You are a tool, nothing more. Press the button or join your predecessors beneath the waves. The water reached my waist. I thought about all the previous archivists who might have faced this same choice. Had they all activated the beacon? Or had they refused and drowned in this room, their bodies somehow disposed of before the next archivist arrived? I thought about Dr. Whitaker and her dismissive emails. She knew. NOAA knew. They had been monitoring this facility all along, using people like me as unknowing intermediaries between humanity and whatever waited in the depths. The water reached my chest. I made my final choice. I slammed my fist down, not on the beacon button, but on the emergency stop switch beside it. Alarms blared throughout the facility. The lights shifted to red emergency lighting. A computerized voice announced, "Emergency shutdown initiated, all systems terminating, facility self-destruct sequence activated." The water stopped rising immediately. The archive door clicked open. The computer terminal went dark. I had 10 minutes, according to the countdown that appeared on every screen in the facility. 10 minutes to get out before whatever failsafe mechanism the original researchers had installed destroyed the entire station, and hopefully the beacon with it. I ran, soaking wet, up through the levels of the station, grabbing only my phone and wallet from my quarters. As I reached the main entrance, I heard the computer terminal in the archive come to life one last time. Its message echoed through the facility's speaker system. "You have made your choice, archivist, but the DEPTHS are patient. We will find another." I burst out into the storm, running for my car. The rain had stopped, though dark clouds still swirled overhead. That perfect circular calm was visible in the sky above the station, the eye of their storm. As I drove down the access road, I watched in the rearview mirror as the station imploded, collapsing in on itself in a surprisingly contained destruction. No fire, no explosion, just a systematic crushing of the facility into rubble. I drove south toward Portsmouth, toward civilization, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. 3 days later, after debriefings with people who never identified themselves but knew everything about what had happened, I was released with a generous severance package and a non-disclosure agreement thick enough to stop a bullet. I check the weather obsessively now. I watch for perfect circles of calm in storm systems. I avoid the ocean entirely. And every night at exactly 3:17 a.m. I wake from dreams of underwater cities and hear, just for a moment, a distant beeping, like a signal, like a call, like a promise. They are patient, they are listening, and they're still looking for their next archivist.